To better understand marketplace domination secrets, it's helpful to walk you through a little of the history of advertising. It will help you better understand the problems you're dealing with today in marketing and appreciate how our program overcomes them. So on to the classroom stuff. In the early days of advertising, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, most companies competed on a local or regional basis. Back then, competition was fierce. Much of the advertising was comparative in nature, which forced advertisers to use their brains when crafting their ads. In post-World War II, everything changed. Americans had amazing growth and prosperity. Income and free time started to grow rapidly. Most significantly, post-World War II brought us television, and in 1945 TV was first commercially introduced. At that time, there were fewer than 7,000 TV sets in existence, with only 9 TV stations in 5 markets. By 1951, there were 12 million black and white sets. By 1952, TVs were in 20 million households. In 1955, prime commercial spots commanded $4,000 a minute. In 1957, Variety magazine reports viewers encounter 420 commercials a week, totaling over 5 hours of watching commercial advertising. Television started the era of brand builders. National companies had a new medium to reach the entire base of U.S. consumers, and because of limited availability, costs quickly went up. Commercial spots shrank from 2 minutes down to 30 seconds. Advertisers had less time to build a case, so the slogan became popular. Aren't you glad you used dial? Ring around the collar? Melts in your mouth, not in your hands. Finally, logos became the most cost-effective way to advertise. McDonald's abandoned their "You deserve a break today" slogan because it cost too much to say it. So they instructed their agency to just flash the golden arches instead. From the 1950s to the early 2000s, national companies made fortunes by advertising on TV. Ad agencies and business schools benchmarked these large companies. Institutional or image advertising was the calling card of big, rich companies. Everyone drew the conclusion, that's how you do it. Today, for the most part, ad agencies, business schools, advertisers, and most business people don't know any other way to advertise. This emulation of Fortune 500 advertising has been going on for well over 70 years by all sizes and companies. We've all grown up with massive exposure to big company advertising. Focus is primarily on getting attention. The creative approach took over and soon began to filter into all advertising media, including radio, newspaper, magazines, billboards, yellow pages, you name it. Once the creative message was in place, these big companies opened up the checkbook and spent the big bucks, and basically gave people no option but to remember the message. After 6,722 times of hearing plop, plop, fizz, fizz, you're going to remember it whether you want to or not. We call this the C&R formula. C stands for creativity and R for repetition. Basically, make something unusual or weird creative, spend $1 billion, R for repetition, and haul your dough down to the bank. It was a heavy reliance on design, pictures, and humor. We call it the big ad agency formula, which uses a ton of C&R, which stands for, obviously, creativity and repetition. Creativity, another way of saying it is, a bunch of 25-year-olds sitting around thinking crap up. Repetition, pound the brand into your brain enough times, which of course takes a big budget. A great example today are all the auto insurance commercials. I've often wondered how many people ever switch their auto insurance because they saw one of their commercials. So how does all this work now in today's marketplace? Well, not as well as you'd probably like it to. It does still depend, to a certain extent, on how much money you have to spend. Top-of-mind awareness, or TOMA, was a term used in the late 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century. You see, ineffectiveness in messaging is made up for by repetition, which is still okay if your ad budget is over $250 million a year. Sure, Fortune 500 advertising works just fine if there are only 3 competitors and each has $250 million to spend on advertising. But that's not you. Competition has changed over the last 15 to 20 years as a result of the internet. Now you've got hundreds of global competitors and a limited budget, which makes it hard to break through the advertising clutter and confusion. So here you are today. You're in charge of marketing and advertising for your company, and you need to create an advertisement, a brochure, or a website, so you draw on all your collective resources. If you're going to put the marketing together yourself, you dredge up your mental archives for everything you've ever seen for 30, 40, or even 60 years as you've grown up. Maybe you've been to business school, you've got the MBA on the wall, and you're counting on what you learned there for solutions. Business school certainly wouldn't steer you wrong, would it? Maybe you try to copy what your competitors are doing. You see plenty of that today. Or, if you're going to leave your advertising and marketing up to so-called professionals, maybe you go to an ad agency for advice or hire some kind of marketing person or department. Well, here's the sad truth. There are two terms in the marketing world you need to become familiar with: institutional advertising and menu board style advertising. Institutional ads are the ones that essentially say, here's our name, here's our best attempt at being creative, and here's the biggest budget we could muster to support this crap. It's C&R at its finest. Almost all big companies and ad agencies, along with many small businesses and small agency copycats, specialize in institutional advertising. It's what they use for most television and mainstream media advertising. Then there's menu board style advertising, which basically says, here's our name, here's a list of what we have to sell, just like a menu at a restaurant. We have hamburgers, we have chicken, we have salads, we have roast beef. Maybe there's even a little picture of each one of them. Another example would be, we're a moving company. We load and unload. We move local and long distance. We move houses, apartments, and offices. We do commercial and residential moves. Many large companies and almost all small businesses specialize in menu board style advertising. If you let the newspaper or radio creative department or Facebook ad people put your ad together for you, you're almost certain to get a menu board style advertisement. It just says, hey, we have stuff for sale. Come buy it from us for no justifiable or rational reason other than we want your money if you even happen to see this ad in the first place. All that being said, you will not maximize the potential of each of your advertising dollars. You'll leave too much on the table because it doesn't do what marketing and advertising is supposed to do. In our workshops, we go into much more depth by showing examples of what we mean. It's a lot of fun because it becomes self-evident. I'm sure you can start making your own observations. Just look at billboards, Facebook ads, listen to radio advertising, or take a look at some of your competitors' websites. Hopefully, you're beginning to feel like you're on the right track to truly be in control of marketing your business. Whether you decide to do it for yourself, hire staff to do it, or engage with an outside agency. And you, yes, you the owner, need to educate yourself on what marketing is supposed to do and how it works. And you set the right foundation. So guess what we're going to cover in the next video? Lesson number 3, we're going to answer the question, what marketing and advertising is supposed to accomplish.